While everybody else in Philadelphia is rebuilding, there is one team in this city where the future is now. The Soul are playing for a championship this Friday night, taking on the Arizona Rattlers in the ArenaBowl. And I've got a special guest for you guys tonight. Let me introduce Mr. Bob Long from BobLongSports.com, home of the official pregame show of the Philadelphia Soul. How's it going, man? Really, really excited to have you on.
Excited to be here as well, Adrian. Thanks so much for having me. It's a big time for the Philadelphia Soul organization. Back to the ArenaBowl, where their dreams were shattered just one game shy of this point last year, and Dan Rattlers and the guys are ready to go.
Yeah, and I'm really glad to have you on. I mean, I met you at the opening playoff game there a couple weeks ago against Tampa Bay. So, kind of had this in the works for a couple weeks, and, we got this going, and here we are.
Yeah, it's a great time, like I said, for the Philadelphia Soul. And this is a really dynamic team, Adrian. We'll get into it in just a few minutes, but one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the league. They have a guy in Clint Dolezal running this squad who has so much experience both as a player and as a coach at the arena football level. And so you combine those factors with the leadership of a guy like Ron Jaworski. He's brought on Marcus Colston, Jari Evans, other former athletes that understand the business of playing football, and now we're in the business of owning a football team. And you talk to the guys at the top of the house, Scott Butera, the commissioner of the Arena Football League. That's what they want, Arena League football franchises that can sustain themselves and understand how to market themselves. And both the play on the field and what's going on in the front office, the Philadelphia Soul is a class organization and deserves to be where they are.
And before we get to this game, we got to talk about that last game, American Conference title game. So the Soul are down by a point to the Jacksonville Sharks. 4 seconds on the clock. Darius Reynolds makes this ridiculous one-handed snag, back left corner of the end zone. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's NFL, college football, Arena League. That's one of the greater catches you're going to see this season.
It was an unbelievable play. Darius Reynolds, it's the reason they brought in a guy like him to play for this Soul organization, a guy who's a very recent ArenaBowl champion, a guy that's excelled at the highest level of this game for a long time. He came in and immediately was the number one, and he showed exactly why in that game all season long, third in the league in touchdown receptions, none bigger than that one against the Jacksonville Sharks.
And it was really cool, too, because I was at the 97.5 Fantasy Fest this past weekend, and Jaws, man, he had some really, really high praise of Mr. Money Reynolds. Awesome.
Yeah, he's a great player. And Jaworski has done a great job of giving these guys a springboard. And Money Reynolds, he's had some CFL tryouts. He's had some looks from scouts at higher levels. And so both the increased exposure that this Arena Football League has this year, new broadcast partnerships with 97.5 The Fanatic, as well as increased partnerships with ESPN from the television aspect, and now Univision coming up, just started this year, as well as everything that Ron Jaworski can bring to the table. It's going to help these guys, and it's going to make guys like Darius Reynolds want to come here and want to win in Philadelphia.
Yeah, you can definitely see the talent. He was creating a lot of separation in the game that I was at. I mean, you could tell he is the money guy that you go to. All right, so let's get into some of the the storylines of this game. 4th time the Soul are headed to the ArenaBowl. They won it once back in 2008. I was against San Jose. It's the 3rd time they're playing the Rattlers for all the marbles. And fittingly, we've got the 2 best teams in the league squaring off in Glendale on Friday night. Both went 13-3 during the regular season. Should be a lot of fireworks. Rattlers led the league in points per game, 66.8, while the Soul, they were runners-up, 61.4. So going to be a lot of points.
One of the really interesting things, Adrian, and maybe NFL fans wouldn't necessarily get this. I don't know that necessarily any fan that wasn't familiar with the Arena League would get this. The reason that this game is being played in Glendale, and it's not even at Talking Stick Resort Arena, it's at a much larger arena just nearby in Glendale, Arizona. But it's a home game essentially for the Rattlers, because when it came down to record first, they both had the same record. Head-to-head, they went 1-1 against one another. And so at that point, they went to differential in the margins of victory in those respective wins for the Soul and the Rattlers. So the Soul won by less than 10 points. The Rattlers won by more than 2 touchdowns. For that reason and that reason alone, the Philadelphia Soul have to ship all the way west to play perhaps the best team in the league. Not an easy pill to swallow there. A very tough matchup upcoming. But, again, there's nothing more you'd ask for. Conference champion against conference champion in the ArenaBowl.
Yeah, these were by far the two best teams in the league record-wise. There was another team that was 12-4. I can't remember off the top of my head who that was, but
the Orlando Predators were that team,
go.
Adrian, and they were a very, very solid team for a long time. They kind of faltered down the stretch and lost to a really good Jacksonville Sharks team. I think a team that didn't have the record that the talent exudes, if that makes sense. It was a team that had Tommy Grady, a guy that 2 years ago was the MVP, and has Joe Hills, maybe the best wide receiver in all of the Arena football, and they couldn't make their way to said ArenaBowl. So, this is an Orlando Predators team that kind of ran into a hot team at the wrong time, was on their way to a conference championship, and the Soul was able to take care of them down the stretch, though, to earn that title.
Yeah, I remember that was something that you were kind of talking about with the head coach, Clint Dalzell, was how good this Jacksonville team was despite what the record might say. And in any playoffs, whether it's ArenaBowl or the NFL or baseball, if you're hot going in, you can make a run. And that's what Jacksonville almost did, almost beat the Soul in Allentown. But obviously the big catch at the end there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I wouldn't be surprised to see this Jacksonville team come back with a vengeance and be near the top of the standings next year. The Soul faced obviously a huge, huge challenge in that game. The people in Allentown were treated to a wonderful game, fit of a conference championship outcome and certainly contest.
Yeah. Now let's talk about these two quarterbacks. We'll get to the defenses in a bit, but Dan Rattlers, Nick Davila, arguably two of the best quarterbacks in arena football. You talked about Tommy Grady as well. Check out these insane numbers. So you look at the touchdown totals. Rattlers, 101 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Davila, 110 scores and 11 picks. And just to show you guys how far ahead, this trio of Grady, Rattlers, Davila are. Grady tossed 94 touchdowns. Nobody else after that tossed more than 70. So there's a clear talent gap and talent disparity between these three quarterbacks and the rest of the league. And just, if you don't mind, just talking about Rattlers and Davila a little bit.
They do it in exactly the opposite way, Adrian. Dan Rattlers, very big, tall, stands upright in the pocket, and can deliver the ball, make any throw on the field. Nick Davila, same type of thing in terms of being able to make every throw, but he makes it look just a little bit tougher. A young little lefty or a former young, shall I say, little lefty out of Cincinnati has really made his home here in arena football and has had an amazing year. You're going to see him be able to move in the pocket, which makes things very, very difficult on this condensed field, but you have a lot less guys on the field. Only 3 guys standing on the line. Restrictions on where the linebackers can move. So a mobile quarterback can really be a tough thing to handle for any defense at the arena football level, and you've seen it just many, many times over the years. Even when you say stick a guy in the middle of the season, that's happened a couple times even this year. A guy that can move can make defenses struggle a little bit. Combine that with the efficiency and the accuracy of Nick Davila. That's what makes him so successful and a staple at the top of the quarterback ranks.
Now, I only saw Rattlers play a little bit. He's a former Miami of Ohio product, actually backed up Ben Roethlisberger when he was there. It seemed like, he's got some good touch on his throws, like the trajectory. I mean, even if you watch that go-ahead touchdown, perfect, loft there at the end there. Just a perfect touch that only really Reynolds could catch it.
Yep. He's a guy that just can make every single throw on the football field. You watch him warm up and you think this is a guy that has a professional arm. He's a professional quarterback, and he's been doing this at a really, really high level. The one thing for Rattlers, I think, that can sometimes trip him up a little bit is trying to squeeze those balls into traffic. He's thrown certainly more than a few interceptions this year. A couple have been returned for touchdowns, and at times that's really put the Soul in a tough spot. Almost did so against the Sharks. That was the opening drive. Picked and returned for a touchdown, gave the Sharks a 7-0 lead. That's going to be really, really important to limit those mistakes in this game, Adrian, because this is an Arizona team where you can't make a lot of mistakes. It's a team that gives up a ton of passing yards. You'd be a little bit surprised to see them so good from a defensive efficiency and turnover, they give up a lot of yards. So whether ArenaBowl can beat them over the top or whether this big play defense snags one or two from him, I think can be a difference maker.
Now, it's funny because in a lot of sports we talk about defense wins championships, and you may not think that for arena football considering how many points are scored, but you look at these two teams, you just talked about the Rattlers, turnover, big play oriented like you were discussing before, and you look at the Soul, they led the league in interceptions with 25. Tracy Belton, Dwayne Hollis, number 1 and 2 in interceptions respectively with 9 and 8 in arena football. So these are two teams that like to create turnovers, and obviously, I mean, coming down Friday night, probably the team that causes more will win the game.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and I'll throw sacks into that as well. The Soul have the most sacks in the league, Arizona number 2. So the top two teams in both those defensive categories. And Jake Metz is a guy on the defensive line that creates a lot of havoc. Teddy Jennings, he's missed some time. He has 6 sacks on the year. Belton, certainly a great player, has been the defensive player of the game multiple times for the Soul this year. And Dwayne Hollis, very, very solid as well. Kind of a Batman and Robin there, and you'll have to ask both of them which one's which. They're really, really talented in that secondary, and in many ways it's been one of the key strengths of this team. Yeah,
I did notice Jake led the league in sacks. He had 8 of them, and it was the next closest was like 6.5. So.
And Burrell, by the way, your man at 6.5 sacks. That's for Arizona, and not for nothing because he's a really, really good player off the edge. A big, strong guy that can move and, again, create havoc in the backfield. That's what it's all about because you're not getting a lot of time back there. There's not a lot of time for these routes to develop. Quarterbacks are looking to get rid of the ball quickly. And having a guy like Burrell breathing down your neck, very enlightening proposition for any quarterback in this league.
All right, now let's we talked about Darius Reynolds a little bit before. How about the Rattlers' Rod Windsor? This guy, 1,667 yards, 48 touchdowns, one of the better receivers in the game. What are your thoughts on him?
Rod Windsor is electrifying. He's a guy that's done it for a while and can really, really play. Second in the league in touchdowns, trailing only Joe Hills, who they played last week. So, and I wouldn't say at the level of a Joe Hills. Not many people are. He's destined, I think, for greater things than the Arena Football League. But the two next best wide receivers in this league, Darius Reynolds and Rod Windsor. Tough matchup. I think it's going to be Belton, Adrian, that's going to be playing on him. I think that's the decision they'll make, maybe a little bit bigger and more physical, but Hollis is going to pick up the slack as well. And, when needed, they can switch off. But I think it's going to be Belton to try to match up against the very tough matchup of Rod Windsor.
All right. So before we get to predictions, I don't know if I necessarily want to make one, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Any other storylines you can think of that you want to talk about?
I just want to talk about how much this can be a beacon, a moving forward moment for the Arena Football League. I'll recall in a conversation I had with Scott Butera. He's the commissioner of the Arena Football League, and he was talking about how these 8 teams here, they made a decision that these were the franchises that were operated the correct way. And this is how they wanted to move forward. They have a team coming in next year from D.C. They have many others scheduled. They're thinking of maybe even moving country past the borders of the United States. But really, these 8 teams is kind of how they restructured this league in a way that would make it monetarily successful. Combination of that, and I think a Friday night kick will allow it to avoid some of the other time slots you see on weekends. And I think people coming home, wherever they may be coming on a Friday night, I hope and think that this is going to be a good example and a good exhibition. Although it's very far from an exhibition, but a good show of the skills that these players have, the teams have, and I think a step forward for the Arena League as a whole here in ArenaBowl. So that's kind of the other big storyline, more of a longer-term storyline, but one that I'm excited to be with the league through as it continues to grow.
All right, so it's prediction time. Is there going to be a parade in Philadelphia?
Wow. Boy, I tell you, Adrian,
It's okay to say no. Our hearts, we're used to heartbreak here in Philly. We're used to it.
I have to stay objective, obviously, as the pregame show host. But what I think the key will be for the Soul, because this Arizona team is really, really good, and they are really difficult to beat at home. They're going to need to get out to a good start to come up with a big play here or there. I think an onside kick, Adrian, at some point will be in the works, whether it's a tie game or the Soul maybe down by a couple possessions, cut it to one, and then make a big play, make a big call to go for an onside kick. I think that's a possibility. I tell you, I think that this Soul team can do it. I'm waffling right now. I'm about 50-50. But I think that it's decided by less than 7 points either way. And I think when all is said and done, Dan ArenaBowl is a better pure passer than Nick Davila. And if they can keep him in check and maybe get some pressure on him in the backfield, I think the Soul can win this game. So I'll go Soul by 4 points. We'll say 61-57.
Now, it's interesting you brought up the onside kick, right? Because they had this moniker, this all-in moniker, all-in Allentown. And what did they do to open up the playoffs? They took a gamble. They went all in. They went for an onside kick to start that opening playoff game. And, they obviously worked to perfection. And it'll be interesting to see if they can pull that off again, like you were kind of saying.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be the first possession necessarily or kind of one of those big moments where they really need something. But I think you will see an onside kick, and maybe don't watch the Arena League quite as much. You think about it from this perspective. What are the chances that you're going to stop a team from scoring a touchdown? It's far, far less in the Arena League than in the NFL or any other level of football. So you put that percentage up against, well, what's the chance that we get this onside kick, that we can recover it? And sometimes those percentages, they can kind of coalesce. If they were to get that onside kick, the opposing team recover at about the 10-yard line, there's still not a 100% chance that they're going to go score a touchdown, not even that percentage or more of a percentage than if they got it back at their own 10. And so that's where a lot of that strategy comes from. That's why the decisions are made the way they are in this league. And I think you'll see at least a couple, because you're going to have offenses going back and forth and defenses saying, man, we need a break, and coordinators saying, we need to shake things up. And I think you'll see more than one on Friday night.
There you go. All right. Before we kind of sign off, I'm going to let you plug your show. Now, you're going to have the commissioner on your pregame show, the official pregame show with the Philadelphia Soul. So I'll let you take that away.
I appreciate it, Adrian. Thank you. Yes, we are the official pregame show of the Philadelphia Soul. Live in Glendale, unfortunately, but excited to have our version of the pregame show. The reason we can't be there is we actually embark upon our high school football season as well. So we call LaSalle College High School football here in the Northeast in Philadelphia. In the winter, we call LaSalle basketball, and also Swarthmore College basketball. So we're doing a lot of things. It's boblongsports.com and at boblongsports on Twitter. But back to Friday night's game, the Explorers of LaSalle open up against the North Penn Knights, two teams in the top 10 of the new 6A in the PIAA. So we're going to have a few members of the LaSalle College High School football team on that pregame show, as well as Scott Butera on that show. So it'll be a combo Soul and LaSalle pregame show, and we're really excited for it.
Well, I'm a Pennsbury alum. We've had some memorable clashes there with North Penn. So, yeah, that's really exciting to hear. And, thanks a lot for having you on. And any final thoughts before we get out?
Well, just one more on the LaSalle side. The LaSalle Explorers play Pennsbury next Friday night at Falcon Field. So
there you go.
Adrian, I hope to see you there, for one. And then for two, very much looking forward to this game. It's been a wonderful partnership with BLS and the Philadelphia Soul this year. Kristen Van Eiderstein's done a great job from our end in terms of keeping us connected. And I hope that we've done as good a job as she has in terms of spreading the word about the Philadelphia Soul, putting on a product on the pregame show, and we can't wait for next season. and hope that they are lifting some silverware, some hardware, if you will, and that there may or may not, hopefully may and will, be a parade in Philadelphia in just a few weeks.
Well, I plan on, right out my door, running right down the street. I'll be blasted drunk. So it's going to happen. We're going to win it all. It's exactly what I did in 2008 where the Phillies won the World Series. I ran right down Broad Street. It was awesome. But yeah, we'll definitely have to catch up, maybe. I haven't gone to a high school football game in a while, but Pennsbury right up the street from me. Maybe I'll have to go and say hi.
All right, there you go. Thanks again, Adrian. You're doing a great job with this show, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you. That is Bob Long from BobLongSports.com. I'm Adrian. Thank you. Awesome show tonight. We are out later. And go Soul, baby. Go Soul. Go Soul.